Hello and welcome to your Geographical Skills videos. In today's episode, we are going to focus on how to construct a comparative line graph. The data that we're going to use to construct this graph is the amount of land that has been burned by wildfires over the past 20 years, and that is measured in millions of acres. And we can see that we've got data for two different countries here, the USA and Australia. So on our graph paper, we need to draw our two axes, the x-axis at the bottom and the y-axis along the left-hand side. On our x-axis, we need to add our years, so 2000 up to 2020, and along our y-axis, we need to add our millions of acres of land that has been destroyed. So I've gone from 0 all the way up to 50, because if I look at my data table, I can see my biggest number is 46 million. So I need a scale that is large enough to include 46 million. Now, we've got two countries that we are going to compare on the same graph, and therefore we are going to need a key. And each country is going to need a different colour. So I'm going to use yellow to represent the USA, and I'm going to use red to represent Australia. If we look at our data table then, we can see in 2000 the USA had 7.5 million acres of land burnt. So if I go down to my x-axis and make sure I'm looking at the year 2000, I know that 7.5 is going to be halfway between 5 and 10. So I'm going to put a dot roughly halfway there. Okay, so that's 7.5 million. I'm then going to go along to 2005 for the USA, which was 8.5 million. So that's going to be a dot slightly higher than my last one. For 2010, it shows me 3.3 million, so significantly lower than the last two. That's going to be further down there. For 2015, this is an easy one to plot. It says 10 million, so that's going to be exactly on the 10 million line there. And for 2020, it is 10.3 million, so that's going to be ever so slightly higher than the last dot that I have plotted. Once I have plotted all of my points, you don't have to use dots, by the way, you can use crosses or whatever symbol you find easy to draw. Once I've done those points, I'm going to get my ruler and I'm going to join up all of my dots. And that clearly shows now a line that illustrates how the amount of land burned has changed over time, over the past 20 years. Now I need to swap to my red colour to plot the same data for Australia. So if I look at 2000, for Australia it was 2.4 million, so that's going to be ever so slightly lower than the middle of 0 to 5 there. Then I've got 229,400 acres, so that's quite a small number. That's going to be quite close to 0 on this graph. For 2010, I've got 1.9 million, which will be about there. 2015, we've got 463,000, so again, that's going to be quite close to 0. And then in 2020, we go all the way up to 46 million, so that's going to be about there. And again, I get my ruler and I join all of those points together to create a line. And you can clearly see that the 2020 Australia value is significantly higher than all of the other values, which reflects the wildfires that we saw in the news over the past year or so. Now, to complete my graph, I need to add in labels for my axes. So for my x-axis, I'm going to label it time, and for my y-axis, I'm going to label it total land burned by wildfires, and in brackets I have included the unit, which is million acres. Remember, if you don't include the unit, it makes it very difficult to understand what your graph is showing. So always include the units, million acres. Because this is a comparative line graph, the title that I've given this graph is a comparison of wildfire damage in Australia and the USA. And that is how you construct a comparative line graph.